A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court by Mark Twain. No, this is not a lost chapter. This is sort of kind of an afterthoughts video on my reading of A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court. The second book by Mark Twain, by the way, that I read on this channel. The first one, of course, being a double-barreled detective story. You can find it also, all the chapters, in a playlist among my playlists, right? As usual, after I finish the book, I sit down and talk a bit about the book, my reading, what I learned from doing this reading, what went through my mind, and so on, and so on. So this is not an analysis nor a review of the book, but more like a, for the lack of a better word, meditation on the reading itself. This book was suggested by a friend of mine, Sharon. Thank you, Sharon. I don't know about you, Sharon, and also you all out there. I don't know about you, but I hate reading reviews of movies or books before I actually watch the movie or read the book. So, because I don't want to know anything before, I want to be surprised. I sometimes, when it's about movies, even avoid trailers, because so often the trailers include the best parts of the movie. Like 2 days ago, right? I watched Army of the Dead by Zack Snyder because I saw the trailer on Netflix and I thought, might be a fun movie to watch. Well, watch it for yourself or watch the trailer and then maybe the intro of the movie. Then you've seen the best parts of the movie and can skip the rest and save yourself some time. That's my opinion on the movie. Whatever. There's a reason why I mentioned movies, and particularly a zombie movie. I don't like zombie movies. Usually I don't like zombies. I do like Shaun of the Dead, but, well, who doesn't? Right? Whatever. The thing is, let's face it, doing a project like this, sitting down every single day, reading a chapter of a book, or to be more precise, starting to read a book and then putting this reading on YouTube, that is a commitment for at least a couple of weeks, if not months. So to get sure that the book that I will be reading is right for me, that I can be at least a bit sure that I will actually enjoy the book. I did, despite my dislike of reading reviews and my dislike of doing some research. I did some research on the book before, on the novel before, and to get sure that I might enjoy it. And I did enjoy this book, even though it wasn't the silly fun book that I originally expected from the reviews that I read. It was also a tough book to read, and that not only because of the language used, but also because of the structure. I will talk a bit about the structure a bit later in this video. What I found funny, though, was that this novel was a major influence for one of the most wonderfully, terrifically bad movies of all times. Like a really, really, really bad and wonderful movie. Yes, I do love Shakespeare, but I also love this movie. Army of Darkness is the third part of the Evil Dead trilogy by Sam Raimi, and it's just a marvelously, wonderfully, hilariously, terrifically bad B-movie. But also incredibly well made and very, very funny. It doesn't really have a lot to do with Mark Twain's novel, other than that a guy is transported back in time, but in this case, well, into a fantasy world, right? But apparently, that's what I read. the novel was a big influence for the movie. And that is what finally sold the novel to me, right? Also because it's a Mark Twain book, of course. There were, though, some actual real movie adaptations of the novel. Wikipedia lists 3, but from what I found out, there were even some more. I did some digging and found out that there even exists one, or existed one, from 1910. 1910, the year Mark Twain passed away, by the way, starring William V. Monk as the Yankee. I didn't find anything about this movie other than that it exists and that William V. Monk played Hank. I don't know if you know William V. Monk. I didn't, but, and this is particularly interesting, Monk was also in a later movie adaptation of the book. And in that movie from 1921, he played the role of Merlin. And this 1921 silent movie was directed by Emmett J. Flynn, and it starred, next to Monk, Harry Myers, whom you might know as the drunken millionaire in Chaplin City Lights, Pauline Stark, and Rosemary Thabby. I don't want to go too much into detail because this is second-hand detail. I haven't seen the movie. I just found this out while doing some research on the web. But from what I read, the script of this movie took considerable liberties with Twain's novel. Like, for example, the plot takes place in 1921 and the protagonist is not Hank Morgan, but a guy named Martin Cavendish, who has happened to have read Mark Twain's novel just before he gets hit over the head and then wakes up in England of the 6th century. And since he has read Twain's novel, he knows what he is supposed to do, right? And he starts to transform Arthur's England into 1920s jazzy California, including the knights riding motorbikes. In the novel, of course, they ride bicycles. About 10 years later, in 1931, there was another adaptation starring Will Rogers as Hank Morgan, Maureen O'Sullivan as Alexander, Brandon Hurst as Merlin, Myrna Loy as Queen Morgan Le Fay, etc., etc., etc. So an all-star cast, basically. By the way, this movie has nothing to do with the 1927 Rodgers and Hart musical of the same name, that was also based on the Mark Twain novel, but was never filmed, and the movie didn't even take the music from that musical. From what I read, this 1931 adaptation also took a lot of liberties, like Hank being a radio man who visits a spooky old house at night inhabited by strange people, including a mad scientist who experiments with radio waves to communicate with the past. And, like usual, a bang on the head sends the protagonist back in time into the 6th century. It seems that screenwriter William Conselman and director David Butler also reworked the book for the personality of Will Rogers, and Rogers, from what I read, seemed to have also ad-libbed quite a bit. One noteworthy thing to say, I think, is that this movie is being listed among the American Film Institute's 2000 list of the 500 movies nominated for the top 100 funniest American movies. So I will certainly try to grab a copy, if I can. Then there is another adaptation of the year 1948 starring Bing Crosby as Hank Martin, not Morgan. Why they changed it, I don't know. In this also very loose adaptation, Hank, a singing mechanic, is knocked out by a storm and teleported back in time. There he falls in love with Alexander, which her fiancé Lancelot doesn't like at all. So a love story, right? Basically with lots of music, lots of singing, as we expect from a Bing Crosby movie. So there's that. Then there is, and I found this particularly interesting, an Australian animated TV movie from 1970 with Orson Bean voicing Hank. And from what I read, this adaptation stayed much closer to the novel than the live-action movies. And I will definitely try to grab a copy if I can find one anywhere. According to the Internet Movie Database, there's also a Once Upon a Classic short adaptation from 1978. Once Upon a Classic is an anthology series featuring serialized adaptations of literary works. It's late. It's late. And this is also funny, right? The thought is funny. There's a TV movie version from 1989 with Kasia Knight Pulliam, whom we know as Rudy from The Cosby Show, and she plays the 12-year-old Karen who wakes up after a horse accident close to Camelot in ancient England. Then is arrested by Lancelot because he suspects she's a demon because of her dark skin. But of course, young Karen manages to free herself using 20th century technology, and she also establishes herself as a mighty magician and makes Arthur to the king we know. Quite a very, very liberal approach to the book, right? And then, oh boy, then there is a 1995 version titled A Young Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court, which seems to be about a high school student who, while trying to fix an amplifier for his band, gets an electric shock and awakes in ancient Britain. And quite honestly, this is all I need to know. I don't want to know anything more about this movie. Seriously, I don't. Even though Michael York, who apparently played Merlin in this movie, was probably an interesting choice. But still, no, I don't want to know anything more. The question is, why did I mention all of this? The reason is simple. I was surprised to learn how popular this book apparently was and is. It has become sort of a timeless classic. Yet, I don't know many people who have read it or even know about this book, right? I didn't know about this book. I haven't read it, well, until now. But still, this book remained relevant over decades. Why, though? And this is an interesting question. I mean, I get it that the whole idea of bringing current technology into the Middle Ages and becoming a powerful, mighty magician with things that seem so mundane to us now, that is a fun idea. And fascinatingly enough, the movie adaptations seem to always play in the time the movie was made. And I see the point. It does make sense to modernize the setting of Hank's original present time, not only because of how fast technology changed, but also because a lot of the humor in the book is based on contrasting the current time with the living conditions in the 6th century. And the bigger the gap, of course, the more comical it gets. I have a bit the feeling, though, that some of the comedy of the book might be lost to current readers. It certainly was to me. Granted, I'm a non-native speaker, and so this is another obstacle. But one of the things that I struggled a lot with while reading was that I wasn't familiar with many of the, at the time of writing, apparently well-known phrases and allusions. Like one very simple example. What is a hello girl? I wasn't familiar with the term. Were you? Today, there are no hello girls anymore, and we don't know hello girls. And if you don't know what a hello girl is, a hello girl was the woman whom you called from your phone, from your landline back then, right? And who got you connected to the person you wanted to speak to. So today we just dial the number of the person we want to call, or choose the name in our contact list on the phone. Or we tell our phones whom to call, right? Give our phones voice commands. Like we talk to something because we want to talk with someone. Siri is my hello girl now. Well, okay, not Siri because I have an Android phone, but you get what I mean. I'd really like the idea of seeing an adaptation of the novel made today. I'd be curious to see that with all the new technology compared to the 1990s when the last adaptation was made. Like today we have smartphones, right, and all. But I doubt that this could be made believable. Like, how would it be possible to explain microprocessors and wireless internet created in just a couple of years from the moment that Hank arrived in the 6th century? I personally already found that the rapid industrialization described in Twain's original book was a bit too far-fetched, right? Okay, let's face it, this book is not a science fiction book and not solely an adventure book. It is a satire and a social commentary just as much as an adventure story. So I think we can accept this rapid industrialization. One thing that I really think we can say about the book is that it brilliantly demonstrates Mark Twain's humanism. He was not only a terrific satirist and humorist, but also a passionate human rights advocate. I'm not so sure about one thing, though, and this is the before mentioned structure of the book. I'm not so sure whether Mr. Twain's social commentary didn't, in some cases, stand a bit in the way of his storytelling. There are parts in the middle of this book, specifically when he showed examples of the injustice during the Middle Ages, that almost felt like a different book. These parts, while no doubt necessary, to me felt sort of superimposed and not really part of the story. They felt like as if Mark Twain really needed to show them, right? Needed to put them in, but didn't find a way to weave them into the actual story. And this is what I found quite tough to read. There's one aspect of the book that I found super scary. Later I realized that this is what this book actually is really about. And funnily enough, at first I found this aspect even a bit irritating until it clicked. And then I realized how scary it is. And I really believe that this is the actual essence of this novel. What is it that I'm talking about? I'm talking about how Mark Twain uses a spoonful of sugar to sneak a terrifying truth into this entertaining story. What is this spoonful of sugar, and what is the terrifying truth? Well, the spoonful of sugar is the wrapping of the story, right? The silly, right, sort of silly and a joyful premise. Let's face it, being knocked out and waking up in the 6th century and saving yourself by having enough astronomical knowledge and the sheer luck of an eclipse at the right moment. that is far-fetched, right? But I get it. Also, a lot of clever, but on the other hand, quite nonsensical bits of humor, and Hank sneering at the dumb and uneducated people of the times of yore, right? That makes it easy to take a step back, to enjoy, right? Laugh at what's happening. Also feel quite superior to the people of the Middle Ages, and laugh about them until, well, until we realize that nothing really changed. Mark Twain didn't really show the past, but he showed, in a bit of an exaggerated way, of course, but he showed his present. And not only did Mark Twain show his present, he also showed our present. And it hit me like a hammer that what we see on social media now and in the news today is not really different to what Mark Twain described had allegedly happened in the 6th century. The superstition, the belief in magic instead of reason and science, the power of the church or religion in general, that it still has over society and so over our lives, right? All the charlatans and quacks that people blindly and willingly follow while scientists and scholars are demonized. We feel so enlightened and so superior today, and yet nothing really changed from the 6th century, because the superstition and the magic thinking is still alive and still deeply rooted in our society. The Merlins of the days of yore are the QAnons and TV evangelists of today, the homeopaths and anthroposophers, the anti-vaxxers and flat earthers, the mask deniers and religious extremists. Nothing really changed. And that is scary. And this is, at least in my humble opinion, this is, sadly, what makes this novel so timeless. Let me end this video with a quote by Isaac Asimov. And he once said, "Anti-intellectualism has been a constant thread winding its way through our political and cultural life, nurtured by the false notion that democracy means that my ignorance is just as good as your knowledge." With that having said, what will the next book be? Well, since I love Jules Verne, and it seems that quite some of you out there also like Jules Verne, I will read another Jules Verne book, following the Connecticut Yankee. Which Jules Verne book? Stay tuned. Bye-bye. Till next time.